When you think of Superman, you think of hope. He's confident, selfless, almost impossibly good. Even when the world's falling apart, Superman just makes you feel like everything's gonna be okay. He's the gold standard. He's the superhero that every other superhero gets compared to in some way. And also, when you think of a generic superhero, your mind probably defaults to Superman because that's just his image. He is the superhero. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have Supergirl. Now, going into this movie, I was expecting female Superman. Same mannerisms, same personality, same moral compass, just with longer hair and feminine features. But after watching Supergirl, I realized Kara is the exact opposite of Clark. She's impulsive, she's grieving, she's lonely. And instead of flying around saving people, she's drifting across the galaxy in this beat up ship, hopping from one alien bar to another, getting impossibly drunk. Just her and her dog Crypto, and living life like she has absolutely nowhere else to be. And honestly, early on, she gave me Han Solo vibes. Not because they're the same character, but because of the lifestyle. You see, they're both just wandering through space, living day to day, trying not to think too hard about everything they've lost. But the big difference is, Han Solo's usually running from debt, whereas Kara's running from grief. And that one comparison instantly made me realize this wasn't going to be another generic Superman movie. Now, I'll be completely upfront and honest right away. I am much more familiar with Superman than Supergirl. I've read a few Superman comics over the years, and honestly, I don't think I've read a single Supergirl comic. So, my apologies. But after hearing all the negativity online surrounding this movie, I walked into the theater expecting another disappointing DC film, as they've kind of been putting out a lot of them over the years. But instead, I walked out thinking this movie really wasn't as bad as everyone made it out to be. Now, don't get me wrong, this movie is not going to save DC. It's not doing well in the box office. I don't even think it's a great movie personally, but it accomplished something I genuinely wasn't expecting it to. It made me care about Kara, and that's honestly the biggest reason I'm kind of recommending this to you. I feel like everyone should at least give it a chance. Now, without getting too spoiler heavy, the story gets moving pretty quickly. A legendary family of weapon makers are massacred, leaving only one survivor alive, Ruthie. She's determined to hunt down the people responsible, and offers anyone she meets one of her family's legendary swords to anyone willing to help her get revenge. And of course, where does Ruthie go to find these mercenaries to help her in her plot for revenge? Alien bars. Why the hell not? They don't ID. Which somehow, of course, leads her to finding Supergirl. When asking for help for revenge, one of the aliens simply just takes the sword away, and Supergirl, feeling bad about the whole situation, drunkenly stumbles out of the bar, beats up the alien holding the sword, and gives it back to Ruthie. And from there, everything just kind of snowballs. The brigands catch up to Supergirl and Ruthie, hearing about the legendary sword being offered. They attack Supergirl's ship and hit Crypto with a poison arrow. What starts out as Ruthie's revenge story kind of turns into Kara's desperate attempt to save the only family that she has left. And honestly, that's the moment where the movie kinda hooked me, because Crypto isn't just some cute mascot thrown out there to sell plushies. Well, maybe he is. He's important, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. But first, I just want to give a big shout out to Milly Alcock. She's the biggest reason this movie kinda works. I thought she absolutely crushed the role and made the most of the half-rate script she was given. She sells Kara's grief, her loneliness, her frustration, her sarcasm. And probably most importantly, she never once feels like she's trying to be Superman. It would have been so easy for this movie to just make Kara into Clark Kent with a different costume and girl power, feminist nonsense. She feels like someone who's still trying to figure out who she wants to become. She isn't the perfect symbol of hope that Superman has become. And honestly, I like that. Some of my favorite Superman stories over the years has always been the darker interpretations of the character, such as Superman Earth 1, Superman Red Sun. These stories work because they remind us that Superman wasn't just born perfect. He wasn't born a legend. He became one. And this version of Kara still feels like she's on that journey. By the end of the movie, I genuinely cared about her. One thing I found really interesting was her relationship with Superman in the film. Superman does make a few small appearances. And throughout the movie, with my limited knowledge of Supergirl, I was wondering, like, why isn't she on Earth? Where is Superman in all this? And she's essentially brushing him off every chance that she gets. She doesn't care to have a relationship with Superman because, as shown in a flashback, Superman is very much an Earthling. He is perfectly assimilated to Earth. When Kara got to Earth, she was a bit older. She knew the Kryptonian language. She didn't understand English. And on Earth, she had a hard time controlling her powers because Earth is revolved around the yellow sun, so everything was just very overwhelming for her. She didn't feel like she fit in, and Clark didn't feel like family to her. And also, unlike Superman, Kara actually remembers her parents and kind of grew up with them. She remembers Krypton, she remembers her people, and she remembers what she's lost. Her avoiding Earth isn't about avoiding Superman. It's about avoiding a place that reminds her that she'll truly never have home again. And that completely changed the way that I looked at the character. And that's exactly why Krypto matters so much. On the surface, he's exactly what you'd expect, Superman's dog. But underneath all that, Krypto is the last real connection that Kara has to her old life. And of course, he's also a board-certified good boy. Ironically, I think Krypto got more laughs out of me than most of the actual jokes because his comedy just feels natural. And then there's Lobo. And honestly, Jason Momoa is one of the highlights of the entire film. Every time he showed up, I was entertained. He has this larger-than-life personality, and every scene with him instantly had more energy. With that being said, I do have one very weird criticism. I almost feel like this version of Lobo could also have been played by Jack Black, and I don't think anyone would have questioned it for a second. He absolutely commits to the role, and he has an absolute blast with this extremely overpowered, unpredictable character. But it's more so that this interpretation of Lobo doesn't feel particularly unique. A lot of the character comes from Jason Momoa's natural charisma rather than the character itself. Now don't get me wrong, I'd absolutely watch more of him. I just hope they let Lobo become a little bit more Lobo next time around. And another thing that completely caught me off guard was just how dark the Brigands actually are. When I walked into Supergirl, I was expecting another standard superhero adventure, of course, and I wasn't expecting the main villains to be basically spacefaring sex traffickers. The Brigands can only reproduce male offspring, so they travel the galaxy, kidnapping women from other civilizations and races to reproduce. That's pretty messed up, and honestly, I didn't expect the movie to go there. Which instantly transitions to another point that I have. This movie does a lot of bringing up real-world Earth issues into it. There's a couple specific moments that kind of pulled me out of the movie and broke immersion. Now this one wasn't one of them, because this serves the story. The main leader of the Brigands is Krem. Visually, this dude is impossible to forget. He's got so many piercings, he looks like somebody turned a family refrigerator covered in magnets into a supervillain. And as ridiculous as it sounds, it actually works. Every time he showed up, he felt like an actual threat. And honestly, between the performance and the design, I think Krem is one of the more memorable live-action DC villains we've gotten in quite a while. Now, in the beginning, I said I didn't feel like this movie was a great movie, and I feel like I've done nothing but talk about the positives of the film, so let's delve into the negatives. The movie itself gets in the way of its strongest moments. The humor is probably the clearest example. You can absolutely feel James Gunn's fingerprints all over the movie. There's a lot of sarcasm, a lot of little awkward jokes, and sometimes it works, but other times it feels like the movie's just scared to let an emotional moment sit there for more than 5 seconds. And that style works in Guardians because those characters have incredible chemistry. They feel like a dysfunctional family that has been annoying each other for years. Here, it feels like the movie is trying to copy the rhythm without fully earning it. And another big thing I didn't like about the movie was, you guessed it, the CGI. For most of the movie, I could live with it. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough that I stayed invested. But once we got closer to the final act, things started looking incredibly rough. There were shots where I could see the green screen edges around the characters. Some of the flying looked completely weightless. And I know flying is technically weightless, but you know what I mean. There was no impact, there was no momentum. Sometimes it looked less like Kara was flying and more like someone dragged a PNG of her across the screen in Photoshop. A few of the environments also felt like they had these really flat textures, made the film look less like a huge DC blockbuster and more like a game on the PS2. And then we get to the music. You've got this huge emotional confrontation, this badass fight scene, Kara finally dealing with everything that she's been running from up to this point. And then this girly pop cover of The Middle starts playing, and I feel like I'm watching a back-to-school clothing commercial. This should have been the moment of the movie that sent me out of the theater feeling hyped up, but instead it felt like the movie was stepping on its own emotional payoff one last time. And one thing I found interesting after the movie was that my wife enjoyed it a lot more than I did. And maybe that's because every part of the movie wasn't directly aimed at someone like me. That doesn't erase my criticisms, but it helped me understand why parts of it resonated differently with us. So where do I land at the end of all this? Supergirl isn't the home run that DC desperately needed, but it also isn't the disaster that everyone seemed to make it out to be. I walked into this movie expecting female Superman. I walked out caring about Kara. Supergirl didn't completely win me over, but Milly Alcock absolutely did. And honestly, if she's leading the next chapter, I'd be willing to check it out.